Hey you all, Farmer Jesse here. Got an awesome farm tour video this week for you from Urbavore Farm, a highly productive, off-grid, no-till farm in the heart of Kansas City, Missouri. And they're not just a salad farm. They raise pigs and hens and a wide diversity of fruits and vegetables. And Brooke and Dan talk about the challenges with all of that, including having to rezone their land agricultural and work with local officials on basically everything they wanted to do, but also how those things were easier than one might assume. Plus the many advantages of living in a city as a farm. The history of this farm could be really inspiring for people looking for land, and they generously break down how they made this whole farm happen. Anyway, they discuss their no-till approach as well as how it evolved, but I don't want to spoil it too much here, so I will just say a couple obligatory notes before we dive in. This video was shot and edited by my partner at NotillGrowers.com, Jackson Roulette. What is crawling on me? Host of the excellent collaborative farming podcast, so huge shout out to him on this, and also Brooke and Dan for being so generous with their time. You can also watch this video here about the composting operation that they bought and moved on to their farm. Also, this video was paid for in part by a grant from Southern SARE and made possible, like all of our work, through the enduring support of our Patreon members at patreon.com/notillgrowers. You can always support our work as well by simply picking up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook from NotillGrowers.com, specifically where the proceeds go to making you more content like this. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, like the video if you like the video. Otherwise, here's Brooke Salvaggio and Dan Hurrier of Urbavore Farm.
Chunks amongst rambling, you know what I mean? It's a sort of mindset, whether we till or not. It's almost like saying, hey, I care about the biology of my soil, and I'm thinking about that when I farm. You know, that's what, if you Google no-till, that's kind of who you are, right? So, and I think we're a great example of like people who were so purist and now are doing a variety of things and still unsure about really what works and what doesn't. I mean, we're still figuring it out. Well, I'm Brooke Salvaggio.
And I'm Dan Hurrier, and we both farm Urbavore Urban Farm. It's a 13-acre farm in Kansas City, Missouri.
So we produce a wide array of vegetables in a no-till cropping system, and we run heritage chickens on pasture for eggs. We also run heritage breed hogs for pork, and we produce a variety of flowers and herbs as well. And we run a citywide composting program, and we make lots and lots of compost.
And in addition to that, we have chosen to keep a lot of our infrastructure off-grid. So we built a passive solar house. So there's an off-grid water system. There's a water recycling on the back end of the house.
We have a gray and black water recycling system.
We're sitting under solar panels.
So because we're in the city, the reason that's an accomplishment is especially because we are in the city, and pretty much everything on our farm was illegal until we fought the code like mad, and you know, worked with a lot of bureaucrats to make this possible. So we're really proud of that. We're also in some ways sort of jaded by the process. We feel like it shouldn't be so difficult to live a sustainable lifestyle, you know, and but yeah, a lot of good and bad things have happened over the years as we've attempted to build this sustainable farmstead in the city. I grew up in the suburbs. Dan grew up very much in Kansas City, Midtown, you know, urban area, and so we didn't really have a relationship with rural areas or with rural farmers or farm communities. And because we came at this from an environmental angle, to us it made sense to grow food where the people live who will be eating the food, and leave nature to nature, you know, rather than go way far out and be driving 2 hours to our farmer's market or 2 hours to the restaurants we deliver to. Just made sense to grow food in the city. Kansas City has a lot of underutilized, abused urban land that is sitting vacant or just being, you know, being treated poorly. And here comes a truck.
So
it's pretty awesome.
advantage of being an urban farm, perhaps.
Yeah, yes, right,
Is that
exactly.
you have an
Is that your
excavation business
neighbor
next to
has
you.
a semi and doesn't spray dicamba, right? Like that's one of the benefits. You know, the downside to not being a rural area is like you can't find a tractor mechanic to save your life. You can't borrow your neighbor's equipment when yours breaks. You can't, hey, I'm putting up hay, can you come help me and then I'll help you next week. Like you don't get those types of relationships. But then, you know, we do have some unique relationships that are positive too. So this land had been slotted for these big development projects for the last 60 years, 70 years now. And all these development projects kept falling through. During that time, owners were scraping the topsoil off the land. And like, I guess they were selling it, you know, so really smart place to build a farm, by the way. So anyway, the point is, like, we like to joke that this land finally met its fate to feed people, and it had somehow narrowly escaped these crazy development projects. And now it is like an organic farm, like you would see in a rural area, but like smack in the middle of a neighborhood.
It was what compelled us, you know. We actually
Yeah.
did like the drive around of the country, and like we're looking for land in the country and that sort of thing. It's cornfield after cornfield. It's not like there's a lot of diverse stuff happening out in the rural areas.
Like
you know?
when I see pictures of my friend's farm in rural North Carolina, for instance, I'm like, oh my God, mountains in the backdrop. It's like, yeah, I would want to be there. You go out to rural Kansas or Missouri, you don't get the same feeling. Like, I don't want to say that we're trying to be trendsetters, but we definitely believe that there should be a mid-scale organic farm in just about every neighborhood, right? Like there should be farms like ours all over the place feeding people and feeding the people who live around the farm. That just makes good sense. It's good land usage. Being able to tap into the waste stream of cities, there are so many good nutrients out there that, you know, everybody considers waste. And if we were way out or even 40 minutes out, we couldn't do the composting, and we couldn't have bought Compost Collective, and we couldn't do what we're doing now. Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if we weren't in this key location.
Yeah.
I know, there's a...
And there goes this one.
I know, there goes the skid steer.
They
Is
need
she
more
getting wood mulch?
They need more wood mulch, so it's better that she's getting it
She
than
do
I am.
it then, yeah. We could be like a really, you know, savvy salad garden with all edible flowers and every different types of greens mix and be selling to all the high-end restaurants, and we could be doing microgreens. And that is kind of what we've seen of most urban farms out there. But we were really hell-bent on this idea that we wanted to have like a real nitty-gritty farm, you know, that has freaking hogs and chickens and geese and big fields of vegetables. A lot of times you can't get away with that because, and for good reason, if you're doing this badly and there's odor and there's nuisances and it's not healthy for the neighbors, there's soil runoff. But I almost wanted to prove that, look, within this regenerative farming context, we can have bigger family farms in neighborhoods, like because of the way that we're growing, because of the way that we're raising the animals, you know, that it makes it possible. Yeah, because you can't throw a CAFO in the middle of a neighborhood. That doesn't work. But you can throw something like this in the middle of the neighborhood, and it can be an asset, and it can actually improve the environment instead of harm it.
We've seen that out here. I mean, you know, there's so much biodiversity. I mean, the sounds of all the frogs everywhere at night.
There are people that possibly resent us being here and bringing in the nature, and then of course there are people who think it's amazing. So whether you're rural or urban, unlike a rural farm, we have a lot of neighbors. I'd say that's one of the downsides, is having to always answer to everybody, whether it's the city codes guy or whether it's, you know, this neighbor or that neighbor. You know, we are definitely held accountable for many, many things. And we do our best to just be not only good stewards to our land, but good neighbors and good community members.
If we're going to farm in the city, then we need to be able to work within the zoning codes. And the main thing that allows us to do that is we got rezoned agricultural.
This, in fact, was the first time in the city's history that they've ever taken a property and downzoned it, meaning they've elected to make the property less valuable. So we felt really good about that, because it's kind of like, depends on what you value, right? I value pigs and chickens, and
Yeah,
but that was our first move, was to rezone this agricultural, and so the purchase of the site was impending,
contingent
upon.
it getting rezoned.
So then we've got this raw piece of land, and we're determined that we're going to build this non-toxic, off-grid, sustainable farmstead, and we're somehow going to finagle that into the city building code. And so we ran into problems with even just little things like our deer fence. The first year we were here, we had $10,000 worth of damage from deer. It was critical that we put up the deer fence, but we weren't allowed to have a fence that high, so we had to work with that. We do have a 10-foot deer fence now, and it's okay, but that was a huge pain in the butt. We got in trouble for that. Sometimes it's kind of like you just do these things and you get in trouble later. So a lot of things we have done are like that. Other things that are bigger, it's more like, okay, we know we're not supposed to do this, but we need to do this, so we're going to figure out a way to make this legal. Our solar panels, for instance, that we're sitting under, they are technically in our front yard, even though we are 500, 600 feet from the street right now. Like, you can't see us, you can't see the panels, but this is technically our front yard, so we weren't allowed to put them here. So we had to fight really hard to make that possible, to set up a farm stand and sell food from this property, and get special permits in order to build our passive solar earth-bermed home. Sometimes looking back, I'm like, gosh, was this all worth it? I mean, I think it was, but it was really time-consuming and really frustrating.
I think it's also like, it does show that like you can do these things. I mean, the codes and the laws, they are very much fungible. They're not set in stone as much as they seem that they are. But all of that stuff can change to some extent. And if you're persistent and you try to view the people that the bureaucrats that are in these institutions as potential allies,
Sure.
then I think you get a lot further.
And now after all these years, we finally gained like this really good reputation. Like, Brooke and Dan, whatever they say they're going to do, they will follow through and do it. And that's a reputation that I'm really happy to have. Because I mean,
tell them we had a neighbor that got a call from the city recently, and they said that they'd had a neighbor complain about our pigs, and that they were smelly and noisy. So we hadn't had pigs on the farm, and we're like, well, we don't actually have pigs on the farm right now. But they're telling us things like we have to have them set back from the property line a certain distance and everything else, and it's like, I don't think that's correct. I know this code.
Yeah, actually, like now it's at the point where like honestly, if you need to know something about codes, don't call the city, call Dan. Okay, call Dan and he will tell you the code. This guy knows the code back and forth. His background's in urban planning and public policy. My background is in like smoking pot and making bad art, So I mean, we make the perfect pair. So that has helped us tremendously when we were navigating all this stuff and trying to build Urbavore. Kind of the point, we wanted to be the pioneers of this so that the next guy who comes along has a much easier go of it. That is the downside. I mean, I definitely, while I love being an urban farm and an urban farmer, I feel like you think the grass is always greener. I feel like my rural farm friends have to deal with so much less bullshit that they can just focus on farming. And if they want to throw up an alternative structure, they just do it. They don't have to get crazy building permits and pay a bunch of money to get some special exception,
Well, and
so
also there's wiggle room about if you start a compost operation, you can do it badly for a little while, and there's not these dire consequences.
For sure, we have to keep our nuisances in check with the compost, be it flies, be it birds, be it rodents, be it runoff, we have to be so clean about it,
and
because there's not room.
And then if we do have something come up, then we have to rely on our history with the neighbors and be like, hey, yeah, I know this is happening, and I'm sorry, and we're figuring it out.
For this to truly be successful, I need everyone on board. I want to feel like I'm making the world better for everyone, not just a select group of people who value the planet or the environment, you know, not just like my kind of people. So I feel, you know, I still have misgivings about that, and I want to continue to do what we can to be positive for everybody around us, whatever that looks like, you know. But we are doing the best that we can right now, you know.
Always.
Always. Yeah. I mean, the first thing, if someone finds, you know, a 5 to 10 acre lot in the city, which there are lots of them, you need to just look up the zoning, look up the ownership history. I mean, the land honestly doesn't even necessarily have to be for sale. This land was not for sale. What we did, without going off on a tangent too much, we would scour Google Maps, and if it was like a big green space, we'd zoom in on it. Normally that's a park or a cemetery. If it wasn't, we'd be like, all right, what's up with this? And then Dan would look into the ownership, the tax history,
like that, you know.
all the property records. Yeah, so that's kind of the first step. And then let's say the land is available. You got to make sure you can do what you need to do on it, because you may get this piece of land and only be able to have gardens, and you know, that's the end of story. So you need to understand what the codes are in your city. Most cities have somewhat restrictive urban livestock codes, and I do think it is possible to get rezoned agricultural. We did it.
Well,
I haven't.
Not every city even has agricultural zoning, so it's, you know, it's something that people will have to look up and like figure out what the restrictions in their particular place are.
Bye guys, thank you.
Oh,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Are you guys doing okay? We're having too much fun. Okay, good.
Okay,
I'm
good.
so glad. So glad you're having fun.
So yeah, I think that the first step is to understand those codes, but then also, I mean, there's all sorts of dynamics. You've got the land piece of it, and like whether or not it can actually grow or not. There was a site that some former apprentices of ours tried to farm that was all fill. Like there was just like it looked like grass on the top, but it was like there was concrete blocks and crap underneath it, and like they couldn't do anything with it, you know. And they went ahead and tried to do it, and then later realized that there were these problems. We sometimes have regrets about this particular piece of land. It's a hilltop. It's a real it's like extreme hilltop, you know. Like it's a windy, like kind of like highest point in the city kind of place, and so it's, you know, there's eroded soils, it's very heavy clay.
I mean, like one of my fields, like the field you came and talked to me in, that is a baseball diamond.
Literally
That's
a baseball
what
diamond.
It was. I'm growing vegetables in it, and like incrementally improving the soil through our no-till practices and putting a lot of organic matter in.
We tell ourselves the myth that like we can improve the soil over time.
Can farm anywhere and make a place better.
And that's like true to some extent. You know, we certainly have made it work.
But now, knowing what we know now, if we were going to purchase a property,
piece of land.
Yeah, we chose this property more because of like its proximity to downtown and all of that. So we were not thinking like farmers. We were thinking like, you know, yeah, we weren't, because we weren't really, I mean, we had hardly been farming at that point, you know. Now we think like farmers, and we choose a piece of property based on its soil, you know.
Yeah. So
you need to make sure you're going to be able to tie into, you know, water is an issue on urban sites. We don't want to water with chlorinated water, so we did not tie into municipal water. It was going to cost us $20,000 to do so anyway. So that kind of made us, that's what sort of sparked us to create our idea for our off-grid water system, which was its own insane project, and I'm not necessarily recommending that either, but you need to make sure you can get water to your property and that it's water you want to use, you know?
I think it was like good to, like we took this approach of building this off-grid infrastructure, and there probably are other people that would like to do that, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend against it, but I think that we should have made some steps to make it a little bit easier on ourselves in the beginning, you know. I think that we should have had some sort of like real basic water hookup at the street.
We farmed here without electricity and without water for a solid 5 years with no infrastructure. And all the food that we grew in these fields with no, you know, infrastructure and water was what paid for majority of the infrastructure you see out here now. So we were like, I mean, we were crazy, you know.
Yeah.
I would not go about it the way we went about it. We had no money. We didn't want to take out loans. We didn't want to get in debt. We were like, we're going to like build this from the ground up somehow. I had like children during this process. I mean, it was insane. And I think we could have made it easier on ourselves. We just chose a really difficult path.
I think that there's things that we could have done that would have been affordable, and that we ended up having. I mean, most of it we had to do anyway. Like the electricity that our solar panels are tied into the grid. You know, we sell, like, if we have excess, we sell it back.
Yeah, so we're not technically off grid.
yeah.
Our solar panels tie into the grid. Our water system is off grid.
Our water system is off grid, but we had to get a meter, an electric meter, put in to get our solar set up and everything. We could have done that from day one. Make it inconvenient enough that you still do the off-grid stuff. But don't make it so hard, you know? But the hindsight side is we probably would have spent that money anyway, eventually, and we could have done it up front and made life easier on ourselves. So, so that's what I would recommend.
But I don't know if anyone would go about it that way anyway. I mean, I feel like what I'm saying is just obvious to anybody. We have seen most of our farmer friends are very like equipment dependent and infrastructure dependent, and you know they feel like they need all these things, so they'd pour money into this stuff, and you know the crops they were growing from the fields couldn't pay for this stuff, and you know they were putting themselves in really bad situations.
Right. So I'm really not saying take out loans and spend more money. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying like you know, to have the knowledge, and maybe the key is to get the knowledge first, but have the knowledge to make smart investments, you know, and don't make things so painful.
Yeah, but just make sure there's some life balance and that your living situation is comfortable enough. I mean, no doubt, any farmer you talk to, whether it's like Dan Mays at Frith Farm or anywhere, we all sacrificed and suffered for a period of time, you know, like, and I think that's part of it. You do have to make yourself uncomfortable. You do have to like want to pull your hair out. Like that's part of earning it and building it. But I think we took it too far because of one of our biggest regrets, I think, is that we've spent the last 10, 12 years feeling pretty burnout and overworked and not really being able to find the joy in what we do, or you know, just, I mean, we love what we do, but we're stretched too thin, and we haven't taken the time to enjoy it like we should have. And I regret that now, especially, you know, my son's 10 now. He was strapped to our backs when we started this. I mean, it's like, where did his childhood go? You know, I've been just working. I mean, we've not like put our heads up for so long and just, you know, appreciated all of it. I mean, I know people talk about life balance and self-care and all these things, and I'm like, what is that? You know, and I used to feel proud of that, like, oh, I don't need that, like I'm sacrificing for the cause. And now I'm like, no, like I do need those things. I don't know, I'm so out of the habit of providing those things for myself. I mean, neither one of us know how to stop and know how to bring it back down to a manageable level. And that's something that I regret. Like as an adult, I should be able to teach my kids balance.
I think one thing that we did right though is that we never took out any loans, and we've always paid for things just
out of
pocket as we go. And I really feel like that's set up a lot of our financial freedom.
We didn't want to be tied down. We didn't want to be in the hole. We didn't want to have, you know, we didn't want to have to do this. You know, I want to wake up every morning and do this because I want to do it, not because I have to do it. And that sort of psychotic frugality is what allowed us, when the opportunity sort of presented itself out of nowhere, it allowed us to buy this compost collection service that will then, down the line, allow us to just totally farm by choice. I mean, I won't have to, you know, kill myself to have this profitable production once the composting thing is really where it needs to be. It'll be, I don't want to say it's a retirement plan, but it's certainly, it's a sense of security and will free us up to maybe do other things besides farming. I mean, that's all we've done for so long. You know, I used to be a person with interests, with hobbies. I used to travel. I haven't done that, you know, I want to rediscover that, you know, and so I think the composting will allow us to do that. And our psychosis allowed us to get to this point. So, you know, there's good and bad with it. You know, so we have always used lots of compost in our fields, but not nearly as much as I would have liked. You know, when you're buying in compost, it's really expensive. I'm amazed at, like, even some of the other no-till growers I've read about that do the deep compost mulch systems, how much compost they have to bring in. And I'm thinking, wow, how do those numbers work out for them? And I know they must work out, but still, there's an ouch factor there. And so we've always used as much compost as, let's say, we could reasonably afford and you know, justify to ourselves. Frankly, that broke down to not enough compost, you know. So I don't do a deep compost system in my no-till. One of the reasons is, yes, because that compost is expensive, but also because we don't irrigate and it gets insanely hot here and we go long spells without rain, you know, sometimes 4 to 6 weeks, which can be terrifying. And so in our situation, deep compost is a recipe for disaster. Like it's too dry, it's too hot. I have to have roots in the soil, you know, even though it's subsoil. I gotta have roots in that clay subsoil. You know? God, yeah. So we've always used compost. We use it in a number of ways. When we direct seed crops, this is crazy, no one does this, but we can't use seeders in our, like, hardcore no-till system in heavy clay. You don't walk a jang down the freaking row. Like, it doesn't work. You don't walk an earthway. So we make furrows by hand with a hand tool, and we literally seed everything by hand. And we do this on a large scale, you know, large scale, in the small scale regenerative farming, you know, terminology. And so instead of covering those seeds back up with soil, a lot of times we cover them with compost. The reason we do that is the seeds tend to germinate a lot better when I put my heavy clay back over them and we get heavy rains. I get the concrete effect. So yeah, I get much more consistent germination, and I feel like, it at least makes me feel like I'm giving them a little nutrient, you know, shot there. And we also use it, we'll make, let's say in like a straw mulch field, we'll pull back the straw and we'll make little mini mounds with compost, and we'll seed summer squash or winter squash into the mounds, melons, and that's always been really effective for us. We do bring in all these other mulches. We have certified organic straw, we were a deep straw mulch system before we kind of evolved out of that and started using other mulches out there. In our deep straw mulch system, you know, it was kind of, we had never tilled our land. We weren't the smarter type of no-till grower that initially tills and then goes into no-till. Like, we had, you know, this was virgin clay subsoil that we were like, yeah, we're not going to till it. We're just going to pile straw on top of it, kill the sod, and plant right into it. And we did that for years. And I mean, pictures of us like chipping away at this stuff. Part of the reason was, yes, we were a little bit, like, I think, sucked up into the ideology of no-till, you know, and not disturbing the soil, not raping the land with the blades of the tractor, like that, you know, we were really wrapped up in that. But also we had no equipment, no electricity, no water, no infrastructure, and big bales of straw. And that's how it was all going to happen for us. So we worked in that system with these compost additions that I've kind of just talked about, you know, building mounds for summer squash, sprinkling on seeds, covering some heavy clay untilled beds with a little bit of compost. That's the only system I knew, and there were not resources like no-till growers out there at that time. And frankly, I didn't even know any other no-till farmers. I thought we were like the only ones, you know? So then when I kind of started seeing, wow, there's this whole movement of people doing this, and they're using all sorts of materials and doing all sorts of things. And they're also like, kind of, I don't know, it just opened me up to a whole new world. And that's when we started diversifying things a bit. I admit I've never really sat down. I don't listen to podcasts, and I don't have a lot of time to do the research I'd like to do, but I saw just enough of that stuff happening that it got my brain kind of going. And we had always grown food well enough that it didn't really necessitate an overhaul, but we still had enough problems that it was like, no, we really, if we're going to evolve as vegetable growers, we can't just keep doing the same thing every year. We decided to do permanent raised beds instead of just straw and compost in flat fields. So we borrowed a BCS and we tilled up just the aisles in some of our fields. In other fields, we tilled up the whole thing and then went back with the rotary plow and kicked up the aisles. But now I'd say about half of our production is permanent raised beds now. We started using materials like leaf mulch and like filling in the aisles with leaf mulch.
We just started trying out the leaf mulch because it was absolutely the cheapest product that we could get.
Yeah, yeah. And we had used leaves way back in the day. Like I would go around the neighborhood and collect the brown paper leaf bags with a trailer and like load them up from people, you know. But those weren't ground.
We wouldn't even charge for it.
Yeah, we wouldn't even charge. Those weren't. Yeah,
Business.
that was my mistake. But those weren't ground up, and so when I was using leaves, I was getting that slick anaerobic kind of thing going on. So that way back when I got like turned off by leaves. I was like, no leaves. But then I saw Daniel May's production and what he was doing with leaf mulch, and I was like, oh yes, leaves. Like this guy's got it figured out. So yeah, we did the permanent raised beds. We brought in the leaf mulch. To me, a lot of the leaf mulch we were getting was so broken down because it had been sitting in these piles for so long. It was just like cheaper compost. You know, if I buy a dump truck load of compost, I'm paying a pretty penny. I buy leaf mold, suddenly I'm getting, frankly, I preferred it to the compost some of the time. So it replaces straw in some applications. I can just straight up cover the beds with it and plant into it. I can use it in the aisles. What I've found is I can pile it up high on some of our really heavy clay beds and then broad fork the whole thing. And you know, it'll be semi-decent that year to plant into, but then the next year, like once that leaf mulch is on the bed for an entire year and goes through a winter, it just becomes so awesome. And the way it kind of integrates with our clay, and suddenly I have a medium that I can almost like call soil. You know, so, and then we're using wood chips in the paths for the first time now, which is always something I'd wanted to do. But until we built this compost site, like we have, Asplund is a big tree trimming company around here, and they will dump.
All over the country.
Are they all over the country? Maybe they are. Well, anyway, they'll dump for free, as will most tree trimming companies, as long as you have an accessible, you know, all-weather site. And we never had that. Our land is ridiculously wet and had, you know, just tons of access issues. But now that we've got the compost site, we can tell Asplund, hey guys, just dump whenever, you know where to go. So we've got unlimited wood mulch now, and so we're like filling up all the aisles with wood mulch this year, which is super exciting. And like with my raised beds, I raise them up because you're getting monsoon rains in the spring of like 10 inches at a time, and it was, you know, it was drowning my crops and creating tons of problems. So I raise up the beds, right? Well, now I don't know, the last 2 years have been really dry, and we've had drier springs, and so my raised beds are kind of biting me in the ass, which is problematic. So right now we're filling, like our beds are really raised up. You know, you got this big dip. So we're filling those dips with wood chips now, and I'm excited because I think I'm going to get the best of both worlds. Like I'm going to get the drainage I need in the spring, and then in the summer I'm going to have you know, enough protection on the sides of those beds. They'll be very buffered by the wood chips, and then I'll get all the good fungal stuff too. You know, we think like, oh, mulch is mulch, right? And if you find one mulch material, that should be the mulch you use everywhere. Why would you diversify your mulch? Well, like, I have found this combination now of using straw, leaf mold, and wood chips that the way they're interacting together, I am seeing like fungal hyphae like I have never seen before. And I found too that, you know, different mulches work better for different applications. Like for strawberries, we grow a lot of strawberries. It's a big crop of ours. I always mulch strawberries with straw because because they're named strawberries. That's the reason. That's the only reason. End of story. No, but like when you're harvesting on a dewy morning, if you've got leaf mulch or compost down, it sticks to the berries. Berries are not something you wash. You harvest directly into the market cartons. So with the straw, the berries stay really clean. So that's like a real functional reason why the straw makes sense. Straw is also like way quicker to spread on a big field. Try spreading leaf mulch on a field or compost on a field or wood chips. I mean, that is a bucket wheelbarrow game unless you have the right equipment. And even if you have the right equipment, sometimes, I don't know, the equipment, sometimes you don't want to put that pressure on your beds anyway, you know? So I like straw for like big mulching projects. It makes a lot of sense. Wood mulch obviously makes sense in the paths. It doesn't break down as quickly, gives you all that good fungal stuff, and it doesn't blow with the wind, you know, straw. You mulch a nice like aisle of straw and like, you know, 10 minutes later it's blown across the farm, you know. Like most no-till growers, we do try to keep our beds, our fields covered at all times. We try not to have exposed soil. We don't always achieve that. Yeah, the more shit falls apart with this system, the more important we become, which I agree is it's a silver lining to like all the bullshit that's going on, you know. People are valuing what we do more than they ever did, like since the pandemic, since like all this inflation stuff and wars here and wars there that are causing, you know, a lot of issues. People are realizing how fragile these global systems are, and shit, you got ground right here, there could be food coming out of it. Oh wait, there are people growing food right here, like, yeah. I mean, we're pretty much done, right? Like, we're good. Yeah. Okay. I hope you got good staff.
I'm gonna give you this. Thank you.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that video. There will be links and all that good stuff in the show notes, and you can also follow both Urbavore Farm and No-Till Growers on Instagram and all the places. Again, you can support our work at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers or by picking up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at no-tillgrowers.com specifically, where the proceeds go to making you more content like this. Check out the podcasts that we did as well with Urbavore Farm, and make sure to check out the compost operation video I referenced. Otherwise, like this video if you like this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.